welcome to the Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. Today focus on a game called Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color. Now at first I thought it was like a remake of the NES game because it's the same title as that, a similar graphical style, but it's actually its own separate game. It takes place 7 years in the future from the NES game, so a direct sequel to it, but it's not considered canon to the rest of the Metal Gear series. So it's like its own little separate side story that does not match up with the rest of the, I guess, considered canon for Metal Gear. But I am no expert on the franchise in general. This is actually the only Metal Gear game I've ever played, and so if I get any details wrong as far as like some of the characters or like some of the overarching lore, please let me know in the comments down below, because this is a very, very story heavy game that could easily get convoluted if you don't really follow the dialogue pretty carefully. I'm not kidding. Like, of a 6 or 7 hour playthrough here, I'd say a solid hour to hour and a half is just simply dialogue and cutscenes. But don't get, discouraged just yet. The game is actually a ton of fun. It's a very stealthy game, very much action-based. It captures, to my understanding anyway, the overall spirit of Metal Gear pretty much perfectly. And it's a great, great Game Boy Color game, and would really be considered like a lost gem if you enjoy stealthy games, or just simply the Metal Gear franchise in general, or just Game Boy Color games as a whole. But let's go ahead and dive into the actual game. Now, this particular game did get moved up in our queue a good bit because the mystery driver requested one of my earlier videos, so naturally moved up in the queue. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner than later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below, and just like Metal Gear Solid, I'll move it right on up. But I always like to start these videos off by looking at the box art for the game, and the box art for Metal Gear Solid is a pretty darn good cover. It has a Solid Snake, the main character, right in the center behind the title, and it has very much of like a smoky drawing look to it. And from what I could tell from my research here, this is pretty similar to like most Metal Gear Solid covers, like art style wise. And so like I feel like it carries on the franchise really well here, and it's just a really good looking cover that to me symbolizes the game, the stealthy nature of it, sneaking around really well. So overall, good cover for the game. Now, when you load up here, like I said earlier, the game is very story heavy, and it starts off with a 14-minute long cutscene, which is a little excessive, but at the same time, it gives you all the background of all the characters, sort of retraces what happened in the first game, and sets you up for the overall or overarching story for this game. So it's a fairly necessary cutscene, and it also has some cool effects in it at the same time. But essentially, General Campbell here has cornered our main character, Solid Snake, got the little laser pointers on him, from the guns and whatnot, and Snake is a mercenary, and General Campbell and Snake together helped through the missions of Metal Gear in the very first game. And so essentially Metal Gear is a giant nuclear weapon here, and it has been stolen by a country or a group of separatists from a country known as Gendra. Now, the separatists of that country have stolen Metal Gear because they want to use it in their own civil war to achieve their independence or to break away from the main government of Gendra. And so while stealing that, though, it's a powerful nuclear weapon, and they're afraid it's going to fall into the wrong hands and possibly just simply blow the entire world up all at once. And so Campbell is trying to recruit Solid Snake to go into Gendra to try to rescue or deactivate Metal Gear before any damage can be done. And so that's the overarching story here, and some cool little effects here for the backgrounds and whatnot, as far as like little maps they're showing or different characters such as that. And we also get introduced to like our team of characters who's going to talk to you throughout the entire game here for like little radio chat or little radio chatter as you go. You do have Mi Ling, who's going to help you with your mission logs and like saving the game as you go. A fellow mercenary named Weasel, who's evidently like on the same status as Solid Snake here. Brian McBride, as well as General John Parker, and like I said earlier, Campbell from the very first game is sort of like your overall, informant, telling you what to do on all these individual missions. And so you're introduced to all of them as well. Like I said, it's 14 minutes right out the gate, and you can skip it if you wanted to. You can play this entire game and not view any of the story, but I feel like you'll be missing out on really what makes Metal Gear, at least from my understanding. And then of course the title screen comes up here, and the title screen has a really cool aesthetic. It's very much what I think like the Metal Gear on the PlayStation looked like, as far as like mostly red with a little bit of black imagery as well as a white text, and just very simplistic and just a really great looking title screen. And so I don't know, I'm a fan of what they've at least put forth so far, and the game hasn't even like necessarily started. And then you have several options here. You can start the game, you can go into options, continue, stage select, which is going to be only unlocked when you finish the game up, VR training, which allows you to essentially work on your stealth skills and like little miniature missions, and there's evidently a ton of those. I didn't go through all of those because that's not part of completing the game here, or finishing the game is what we call it. Also versus battle, I didn't get to try that out because it requires a link cable, And then, like I said earlier, there's some options, but we're going to go ahead and start the new game. Now, I do choose normal mode because that's the default here, and the game starts off, you basically land in a garden here, working your way through Gendra, trying to find your way to Metal Gear. And so, essentially, this is how the game is going to work for almost the entire experience. You are Solid Snake here, always a little bluish gray character, and you have a little overhead view, and you're trying to go through, try to sneak around the guards and whatnot, or sneak around the soldiers, not get detected by them, and if you get behind them, you can punch them out, knock them out, or if you get a weapon, you can, of course, start sniping them out from a distance. But if you ever get caught from the soldiers, at that point, you have an alert status, and soldiers just swarm from all across the map to try to take you down. And if you can hide long enough, then you can get undetected, and then you have another countdown before you can go back into stealth mode once again. And you can see on a little map up here in the upper right hand corner, like where all the soldiers are located at, them walking back and forth, where you are at on the map. It's a really good system as far as creating a stealth game for you to look out and sort of, I guess, map your path out that you want to go on in order to avoid detection, in order to get through these levels as smoothly as possible. But that's not to say I was very smooth at the start of the game, because even when I've just simply started out and trying to figure out how to play, I found a gun, I was trying to equip it, I got detected, the swarm comes in on me and kills me almost immediately. But the game is very forgiving. I mean, you do start back at the beginning here, but throughout the game you reach so many checkpoints, so if you do die, you don't get knocked back really far in the game. You sort of resume, maybe 5 minutes back before where you were at. But my second try going through mission 1, I did get a little bit further here. I was able to figure out if you sort of press start button, you sort of lay down and start crawling. You can crawl through the bushes, you can crawl through these little mud swamps. You're undetected in all of those areas. And pretty much in mission number 1, your goal is just simply to remain undetected all the way to the very end of the level here. You cross over a little bridge, or I took the little mud swamp off to the side of the bridge, and you get to the top and you have accomplished mission number 1. And the game actually gives you a rating for every single one of the missions, and I got a terrible ranking for mission number 1. So I guess I wasn't stealthy enough, or I was too stealthy and I didn't kill anybody. Maybe I should have killed somebody. I get terrible rankings throughout almost the entire game. Poor, terrible. I think I got maybe 1 or 2 goods, but I never got a single excellent. And so I guess there's always room to improve. But mission number 1 is a pretty straightforward mission. It just sort of gives you the overall stealth mechanics of the game. And then we get a little cutscene here, camera behind Solid Snake looking through the jungle. It says the title of the game. And there's a lot of cool little animations here, little video shorts as you go. And then there's a lot more dialogue, a lot more talking. But I think this dialogue here mostly just sort of covered what was in the intro to the game. And so if you skip the original 14-minute cutscene, this sort of catches you up on some of the operations that are happening in Gendra and things like that. But now when you start mission number 2 here, you have pretty much 2 objectives. Objective number 1 is to gain entry into the fortress, which will lead us to Metal Gear. And objective number 2 is going to be avoid detection from enemy soldiers as well as cameras. And so you basically sort of wander around here trying to find all the entry points, and you want to go into every single doorway or every building that you find, because you never know what kind of weapon's going to be inside there. Different ammo, different rations to heal yourself up, or ID cards to get entry into later things. And so you really do want to explore the game as much as possible. And so as I'm exploring here, I do come across one room, and a little funny little dialogue between the 2 soldiers, how they're saying no one ever comes in here, it's pretty much a joke of a job, things like that. And of course I show up and I pretty much rampage my way through there, and I steal the weapon inside the room, which is going to be a silencer for my gun, which is really handy because now you can take enemy soldiers out and not be detected. And so a vital weapon to have here. And then I go back outside and I continue my way north here, crawl under a little fence, and then I get a phone call from someone I never expected to hear from inside of a Metal Gear Solid game, or much less a Game Boy game in general, and that's going to be Chris Jenner. So I guess Metal Gear Solid is technically a Kardashian game. I mean, I get Kim showing up here soon, Chloe, all the other ones that I can't think of at the moment. I'm just kidding. This is actually spelt different from Kris Jenner. I just thought it was really funny that one of the characters is named the same as a Kardashian. But Kris Jenner here, she's actually going to be part of what's called Delta Force. And they were sent in before Solid Snake in order to try to rescue or take or basically get back Metal Gear. And in the process, her entire Delta Force got killed off, and so now she is asking Solid Snake for help, and they can join forces to finish up this mission. Snake says that is fine by him, and of course, Snake has some weird dialogue here. He's really trying to be dark, almost I don't know, a angsty teenager, saying things like, "I don't care, you decide." And it's all right, Batman, calm it down a little bit. And then he tries to flirt with her and say things like, "Care if I call you Chris?" and things like that. I don't know, it's a weird little dialogue or dynamic between the 2 characters, and it is going to develop more as the game goes on, but it's definitely a little bit on the odd side here. But regardless, Chris joins our team here, and now we're going to be working together in order to try to find Metal Gear. And like I said earlier, you do want to explore every cargo truck, because inside one of the cargo trucks I actually get my ID badge, and the ID badge is going to allow you to go through certain locked doors, and the ID badge will be continually upgraded as you go, but I'm only a level 1 clearance at the moment. I journey into our first building here, and look at these cool effects. Now this sounds like really dumb, but anytime like Snake runs through a puddle here, it actually has like little droplets coming off his boots, and also like a different sound effect when he goes through the puddle. I don't know, like that's really advanced for a Game Boy Color game. Most Game Boy Color games wouldn't have, they just simply let you run through the puddle and nothing would have happened. And so just a little extra the developers put in here to make the game a little bit more immersive. But once you go down to the sewers, you finish up mission number 2. And I didn't get a terrible ranking on this one. I got a poor ranking. I got 1 kill and I got detected 1 time. And so like, I don't know, I think the game like wants you to kill more people and still not get detected, and maybe that increases your ranking. But regardless, I'd rather not get detected and finish the mission, so I really don't kill a heck of a lot of soldiers throughout most of the game, just because I play it more stealthy. Now when we start mission number 3 up here, we get a phone call from Kris Jenner. She said that she's on the floor above us, and we need to come rendezvous with her. However, like, she's going to be in disguise, she's going to be looking like the rest of the soldiers, and she's going to give us hints on how to recognize her. And she says that her hair is tied back, because she's a girl, and she's going to be wearing a red hat. And so it's really not that complicated, but the game mentions it like 4 or 5 times. Like, they keep reminding you, like, look out for the girl or the soldier with their hair tied back and the red hat. And about 5 minutes later, look out for the girl with the hair tied back and the red hat. The game is really making sure you like keep up with the main objectives here. And I think the reason they do that is because there's like so much background, there's so much dialogue. For players who are like sort of skipping through it, they want to make sure they get the main points or the main objectives across multiple times in case people are, you know, skipping pretty fast here, so they at least know what to do. And so like I'm journeying through the sewer here. I do get ambushed a few times, you know, they come after me. I try to take a few of them out. I keep going, but I eventually come to a part here where a little rat, and it's just a small rat in the sewer, and like a literal pause of a cutscene here in order to see the rat, and then the rat like runs away, and it's like, that was a really weird little cutscene to show off. And I guess to show like Snake just doesn't like rats, even though like Snake should like rats, because like, you know, if you're going for like, I don't know, symbolism here, you know, snakes eat rats. So like, why wouldn't Snake like, I don't know. Probably reading way too much into the game here. But then you come across these 2 soldiers who are in the sewers, and they keep talking about how like the river is flooding, and the sewer system itself is going to have a massive influx of water. It's going to be washing through. They're like, hey, we should probably get out of here. And one thing I found sort of funny that the soldiers said, they said it's merde if we stay, and merde is French for shit. And so it's like, it's shit if we stay, which makes sense because they're in a sewer, and that's what's going to be washing toward them. And so, I don't know. I think most players who were playing this game probably didn't know the dirty words in French. And so, I don't know. Something to fly under the radars of the, I guess, ESRB at the time. But then we get like a little mini game here, and Snake is essentially trying to rush through the sewer, avoid the tidal waves of water or sludge that are coming at him. And you have to climb up these little ladders anytime you see the sludge coming on your little map. And then you climb down the ladder, rush over to the next ladder, climb up it, another little wave of sludge comes through, and you basically travel your way through the entire sewer system this way until you come across a room here. It has one of the most iconic items in any Metal Gear Solid game, and that is going to be the cardboard box. There's something so satisfying about like just plopping the box on top of your head and knowing that you are completely hidden from the entire world, because no one would ever expect somebody to be underneath that cardboard box. I don't know. There's something very glorifying about it, and you actually get multiple cardboard boxes in this game. Not 1, not 2, but 3 cardboard boxes. Now, once you get out of the sewer here, though, Campbell's going to call you, your main correspondent. He tells you once again, hey, look out for that girl with the hair tied back and the red hat. That's going to be Kris. And so just to remind you that that's who you're looking for. But you journey on, you find a gas mask. Anytime you enter into a room, it has like sort of a hazy feel to it. You put the gas mask on, and your oxygen does not deplete as quickly as it normally would. You also find a upgraded ID card, so now you can have level 2 clearance. And we finally get to an elevator here that we can, of course, you know, begin to rise up to meet up with Kris. And I always enjoyed like the elevator scenes. Like, there's just something like satisfying, like seeing the levels go down behind you, the coloring. Like, the game did a really good job of, as far as like showing what the Game Boy was capable of as far as like graphics go, and all these little individual cutscenes. And I don't know, it just really pushes the hardware to the max. Now, when you're on the second floor here, you're searching for Chris, and I did find something pretty cool, like as far as like the stealth immersion. You have these little holes, and you can like back yourself up into a hole as you're crawling on the ground, and the soldiers can't see you inside the hole. Also, like later on, like there's like computer desks that you can crawl under as well. The game did a great job with the stealth mechanics, and anything you see that you think you might be able to crawl under, you can probably crawl under and be able to hide yourself from the soldiers. But you continue working your way through the floor here, and finally come across a soldier, wouldn't you know it, with a tied back hair as well as a red hat, and it is indeed Chris. And mission number 2, or mission number 3, sorry, is completed. And wouldn't you know it, I got a terrible ranking yet again. Like, I don't feel like I'm terrible at the game. Like, I'm completing all the missions, I'm dying minimal times, but evidently I'm just a terrible player. Now, when you start mission number 4, you have yet another cutscene between you and Chris. And this one here, you know, Snake is really laying the lines on thick for Chris, trying to impress her. Says things like, easy on the eyes, you know, Snake, quite the old dog here, trying to win Chris's favor. And Chris does fall for it to some degree. You know, she starts opening up about her worries of the military, what she's doing this for, the fear of dying, stuff like that. Her and Snake have like a little pep talk, but they also determine for like the main storyline that when it comes to Metal Gear, there are some researchers or developers for Metal Gear handling like the nuclear codes and such, and there's only one developer who's left, and his name is Jimmy DeWiz. And Jimmy DeWiz is hidden inside the barracks, and we need to go to get to Jimmy so he can hopefully deactivate Metal Gear so they can't use it and you can't, you know, wreak destruction of across the world here. But she also reveals to us that the separatist group in Gendra has hired 4 mercenaries to try to stop us from getting to Metal Gear, and they are as following. You have Slasher Hawk, Marionette Owl, Pyro Bison, as well as Viper. And Viper, I think, is from the first game, at least from the dialogue that's coming up here. And so, you know, we have basically the 4 bosses we have to get through in order to stop Metal Gear. Now, as far as like the gameplay for this mission, you basically just watch where Chris walks to, and you just sort of follow Chris and avoid the soldiers, and you take them out as you need to until you exit out that door, and you see another little cutscene of where Chris is going next, and you're basically just following Chris as you go here. And eventually, when you get to the outside, there is one really annoying puzzle as far as like these doors over on the right hand side. You have to like press the computers in a certain order, and I bet it took me 10 minutes to finally get all the doors to actually open up to continue on. And there's also like a weird little part here too. Like there's a little bird on the ground, and like if you approach the bird, like all the sensors go off, all the alarms go off, you've been detected. It's like, was it A, the bird is working as part of the Gendra forces and trying to alert and trick me here, or is B, they're just so paranoid even the opportunity for a bird to fly is going to set off all of their sensors. I don't know, I felt it was a little crazy for the bird to have such an impact on my game here. But eventually when you get to the end here, you are going to go up against Slasher Hawk, and basically Slasher Hawk's up on a little cliff here, and you have your grenades, and you just simply have to toss your grenades up on the cliff and basically hit Slasher Hawk probably like 10 times, and Slasher Hawk is taken out. A very easy boss battle, but at the same time, you know, at least we got some boss battles in here. A fun boss battle, mixes up the gameplay a little bit. It's not all stealth. Now you got a little bit more combat, a little more action. And so, I don't know, I do appreciate a good boss battle. And I almost forgot about the really good cutscene before the battle. You have a Slasher Hawk here, you know, wind blowing through his hair, his little hawk off to the side, you know, wind blowing through his feathers. And I don't know, as like a nature fanatic, like there's something really peaceful about this particular scene. And you actually start to, you know, like the character of Slasher Hawk. That is before you know, hurl all your grenades at him trying to kill him. But once you finish taking him out, mission number 4 is complete. And I think I got a ranking of, oh, wouldn't you know, another terrible ranking. Now, mission number 5 picks up pretty much exactly where mission number 4 left off. We have a little talk or a little conversation with Slasher Hawk before he passes away. And he tells a really sad story. He talks about like how when he was a small child, he was abandoned. And these natives of Australia raised him. His mother and father were these natives. But the rest of the natives did not accept him, and they like, you know, sort of poked fun at him, and he was never like truly one of them. Even though like he tried so hard, he learned like all their customs, all their songs, all their lore, all their stories, like everything about him. And then when his parents passed away, the natives turned against him and they kicked him out. Even though like this is everything that he knows in life, this is who he is, he was kicked out. And then the only people who accepted him was his little mercenary group, and so now he's joined them, and he actually feels like part of a crew, because he was fighting with that particular group, but it was really just simply because he was an outcast from his homeland. Now, when he passes away, he actually says something really sad. He's like, maybe my, you know, natives or my original family will finally accept me now that I've become a spirit. And so Who knows? But you know, it was a really moving little scene here between you and Slasher Hawk. Now at this point, we do go back into the facilities, and this is probably one of the most annoying levels in the entire game. Because yes, you do have your one ordinary box, but then you collect a blue box and you also collect a red box. And there's a little conveyor belt you have to get on, and it's going to process you as a box. And whichever color box you are determines like which path it's going to take you on. And there is so much trial and error trying to figure out like where to go in this level. And then also like once you figure it out, like just how long it takes you to basically backtrack all your paths to get back to the beginning of the conveyor belt, try a different path. And like this mission here is just a headache in pretty much every way possible. Now you do get some thermal goggles which allow you to see in the dark, which is a cool little addition here. You know, it adds to the little spy mechanics. But I don't think there's anything to get this level could do to take away the annoying factor of this box factory. I don't know, like whoever thought like, you know, it would be fun for a game idea. Let's just do a giant box factory level. It did not go over well, at least for me. And when you finally do find Jimmy the Wiz, he basically tells you that you need to help him get out of his cell. And there's a weak, say eastern wall or western wall, whichever is to the right side of the screen here. We have to blow up part of the wall in order to help him escape. And so you have to do a little bit of backtracking. You finally get there, you blow it up, and now you and Jimmy are free to leave the cell. Now mission number 6 here starts off with a cutscene between us and Jimmy, and I have to say, like, I didn't expect Jimmy to like actually be a kid. I assumed he was like just, you know, called the Wiz because he was just a really smart fella. I didn't expect him to be a literal child. And so since he is a child, Snake takes the opportunity to give him a lecture on consequences of working on such a devastating weapon for mankind. You know, Snake is always the scolding father figure here. And at this point, the power does go out, and the kid says it's because Metal Gear is charging up. All power goes out because it needs so much power to do anything. And so Snake then says he's going to go search for Metal Gear, take it out, and for Chris to watch over Jimmy. And what a task we've given Chris here, because there's going to be so much annoyance Chris is going to have babysitting a teenager named Jimmy. But you get your little night goggles on, you begin to search for these levels here. Eventually get like an upgrade to your night goggles, which allows you to see without infrared. And so that's a plus. You continue journeying through it. You actually go back through all the little conveyor belts that you were on earlier, but it's way better because you're not having to like, you know, figure out like which color is which for the boxes. And when you finally get to the boss's level, it's going to be the marionette owl. And the marionette owl has a really cool boss scene here, because anytime like the owl can block or black the entire screen out or white the entire screen out, you can't see anything. And you know, the owl and her little comrades here or helpers begin to move around, throwing their knives at you, and you basically just have to, you know, keep yourself on the move, try to avoid it, even though you can't see. When the lights come back up, you have to search for her, not her friends, shoot her, take her out, and it takes probably like 10 shots once again. And it's a fairly difficult boss fight, but it's a really cool mechanic as far as like mixing it up. So like not every boss is going to be the same. Each one has its own unique gimmick here in order to take them out. And then you start at mission number 7, and of course you get the death scene for Marionette Owl. And Marionette Owl tells like the saddest story. She talks about like when she was growing up, she watched her friend Laura die or pass away, and that made like a real impression on her. And just like most serial killers, when they witness a traumatic murderous event, they then grow up to commit those murderous events on their own. And so Marionette Owl, you know, continued to be a serial killer, became a mercenary, taking and killing all these people. And when she passes away, she says like she sees the gates of heaven and waiting for Laura's waiting up there for her, and then she's like ripped away from it. And so like I guess Marionette Owl went to hell. I mean, just really, there's no other way to interpret the dialogue here except for she's paying the toll for her sins. And at this point, Campbell comes across the radio, tells me that Metal Gear is located to the north of me, and I get a new weapon called a mine detector. And of course, you crawl into this little field here. It shows you where all the mines are. If you just simply crawl across them, you deactivate the mine, and you can continue on your little route. And when you get to the top here, we have a little cutscene here of Viper and a helicopter, and it's not going to be a helicopter showdown like you're expecting, but Viper just has a little exchange with you, and he tells you that we are too late, and Metal Gear is already set to fire off its nuclear blast. And you get a little scene here of, you know, Metal Gear, you know, shooting its little missiles out, and so our first true look at what the Metal Gear weapon can do. And at this point, we have to navigate all the way back down through the minefield and get back to the bottom in order to complete the mission. Now, at this mission, I finally got a good ranking, but I don't think it's anything to really brag about because like I don't think you get anything below a good ranking because like all you did was like crawl through some mines and then crawl back through the mines. And so I don't know, like it was a hollow victory. Now mission number 8 here tells us that we were too late. Metal Gear actually launched its nuclear attacks. They flew across all the way to the United States of America, but they landed in the deserts of Nevada, and when they landed there, no one died. And then the general comes across a little radio transmission here and tells us that these were warning shots and tells us that the U.S. needs to basically acknowledge that they are a separatist state, that they are the true leaders of Gendra and get behind them in their civil war. And if they do not basically correspond to this, they're going to do another shot in like 30 hours. They're going to attack a major city like New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, something like that, and kill basically millions of people. And so we have 30 hours to either stop Metal Gear or surrender to them. And then like all power cuts out. Here's some gunshots. Chris and Jimmy the Wiz have been captured. And so now we have basically 2 missions. We need to get to the power plant, destroy the power plant so Metal Gear does not have power in order to launch these next shots. And we also need to rescue Chris. And Snake says, you know what? I'm going to do both. He's going to be a true hero here. But one thing that's not an option is to give in to their demands because they said the United States does not give in to terrorist demands. Now, for the most part, this level is going to play out pretty much like most of the other ones. You know, the same stealth mechanics, same spy mechanics, taking enemies out. But the new weapon you're going to get is the rocket launcher. And the rocket launcher is a really cool weapon because you can shoot it out and you can guide the little missile with the D-pad and you can basically glide it through like tons of parts of the level here, take out enemies, take out like little circuit boards to deactivate these electricity fueled panels that you need to walk on. So there's like different puzzles you have to figure out with, you know, commanding the little missiles here as you go. And most of them are pretty easy. The only one that was like a little bit difficult is you have to go down, you have to like shoot one that's going like around the building and stay close enough to the walls as well to not be detected by the cameras. That was the only one that was like a little bit on the difficult side, but for the most part, just a fun gameplay mechanic. Now the boss for this mission is going to be the Pyro Bison, and as expected, he has a giant flamethrower that he's, you know, shooting fire out at you, and you have to hit him in the back. And so what you have to do is you have to either lay down proximity mines for him to walk over and blow up to the explosion hit his back, or get your little missile launcher out here and sort of guide it around, hit his back that way. He's not too hard of a boss, but it's actually a really fun boss battle because you're not just simply one-on-one trying to shoot him or trip through grenades. You have to like map out his path a little bit and sort of like get sneak attacks. One of the better boss fights. Now mission number 9 obviously continues the aftermath of the fight with Pyro Bison. We get a one-on-one chat with him as opposed to the other ones, you know, who had like remorse, like a little bit of a sad story. He has like no remorse about what he's done. He buckles down on it, and you know, he even gives me like a really key piece of information here. It says like one of my team members is not who they seem. They're actually on the inside working for him and for his little mercenary team. And so he gives me like a little bit of a I don't know, a brain bug of sorts. Not a literal brain bug, but you know, something to think about. Eat at my old noggin here. And then Pyro Bison sets himself on fire and sacrifices himself. One of the weirdest character deaths here. But at this point, my team argues back and forth like who the person could be. We don't figure it out, but there's somebody on my team who is a bad guy in disguise, and we need to figure it out. But anyway, we do need to go ahead and take out the power plant. And so we go down there, and it's like electrified field around the power plant or around the main turbine here. And so we decide we need to blow up all 4 of the columns, and you have to find basically these little columns here, little rectangles like etched out of them. You have to lay a little C4 bomb there, blow it up, and once you blow all 4 of them up, at this point the building catches on fire and you have to escape from the exit. And you have a timer countdown on that, but luckily for me, like when I blew the last one up, I was like right beside the exit, so I got out of the level in like no problems at all. Now mission number 10 is probably going to have the craziest cutscene in the entire game. And you're talking to Jimmy, and Jimmy actually tells you that the person in front of him is actually a dead Delta Force agent. And you're like, wait a second, I thought Chris was the last one. You're like, no, evidently Chris is lying, and there were more Delta Force that we just didn't know about. And so something's up with Chris here. At this point, Jimmy then tells you that the Metal Gear can launch even without power. And so I don't know why we were, you know, in such a mad rush for the power if it can be fine without it. But regardless, Jimmy's, you know, all tore about this, and he has these little handcuffs on him. And then the handcuffs like just blow up, and Jimmy is gone. Like they killed Jimmy the Wiz off, and it was such a shocking scene because, you know, you just didn't expect it. He's just a kid. You rescue him. He's got these handcuffs, and I don't know. Like this game is crazy when it comes to stuff like this. Like you don't usually expect him to kill off a kid, nonetheless, in such a violent way. It was a really weird scene in the game. But at this point, my team sort of determines that Chris is probably the mole. She's probably the informant on the team because if she's lying about Delta Force, like what else is she lying about? It just makes the most sense. And so my team then does like a little airstrike, and it blows out a little path here for me to journey up to Metal Gear. And on my way up there, I get a second encounter with the helicopter from earlier, but it's not Viper in the helicopter this time. It's a girl in the helicopter, and we assume it's Chris. And it's a really great helicopter battle here, because like in the first part, helicopters at the top of the screen firing like little missiles out at you. You have to throw your grenades up there. And then the helicopter goes off to the left-hand side, has like little turrets, and shooting little bullets at you. You have to hide behind like little rock walls here, lean up against them to try to avoid the attacks. Sort of come out from the side, throw your little grenades out there. It's a really good boss fight, and like that's one thing I like really enjoy about the game is just like the variety of all these boss fights and like how all of them use different mechanics. And so it's like all the same mechanics the game offers you, but you have to use them differently for every boss. And so a really well-designed boss fight. Now when Mission 11 starts up, we do find out that the lady inside the helicopter was not Chris. It was fairly a bit of a shocker for the game. It's actually a new character named Sophie. Now Sophie is actually the second in command of the general, and she gives a little bit of a background story about herself. Is she was the love child of a native in the area and a French businessman. The French businessman came down there, had a child, left, never came back. And so she was a love child of that. She was brought up in the village in Gendra. And at some point she went and confronted the French businessman. And the French businessman sort of, to wash his hands of it, gave her a bunch of money and said to go to college. She went to college. And while she was in college, the government of Gendra took over, murdered her mother. And at this point, she saw the government obviously was abusing its power, going too far. And so then she joined the general, a separatist group, to try to overthrow the government. So it's actually making like the separatist group in Gendra sound somewhat of a positive thing here. And then Snake at this point, decides to let Sophie live because he's like, you know what? I believe in your ideals. And if you do it correctly, I think you could possibly get the government run in the right direction. You just went about the wrong way of getting a super hazardous weapon like Metal Gear involved that could possibly destroy the entire world. But I'm still on a mission here to find Metal Gear, find the actual general who's commanding Metal Gear, and try to disperse of this hazardous plan as fast as possible. Now this is the second to last level in the game. It's going to be the last level as far as like just simply a overworld to explore and not just simply boss fights. And so this level here is basically going to take everything you've learned throughout the entire game and basically say like, all right, show us what you got. You have all the tools, explore this level, figure it out on your own with no clues or anything like that. And you have to use like your missiles in this level. You have to use your mine detector. You have to use like little bombs to blow up walls like you did for Jimmy. Pretty much any item that you used earlier in the game, you're going to use again in this level. Just have to figure out like where to use it and how to make the best of your space. And I really do enjoy when games do something like this where they basically say like, all right, we've taught you everything you need to know. Now show us what you got. And I don't know, it's a really well-designed level, and they really implemented all the different effects pretty much naturally into it to give us a really great final level for the game. Now when you get to the very bottom floor here, you're getting ready to approach Metal Gear. You are headed off by Viper, the final of the 4 mercenaries, and he sort of gives you a little bit more background. He says that he was sent in 2 years ago with his mercenary team, and there were a bunch of them, to take out Metal Gear. He succeeded, but when he came back to the United States of America, everyone on his team was assassinated. And he was trying to figure out why, and he came back over here to Gendra, and that's why he's working with them to get Metal Gear going to sort of seek his revenge on the United States for assassinating his crew. And so the plot begins to thicken here, and we have our final showdown with Viper, and it's a really cool fight. And so what you're doing here is Viper lays out all of these little booby traps all around the area, and then he basically runs from one side to the other, and you have to sort of memorize where the booby traps are at and sort of navigate your way through there, and then shoot him one time, and once you shoot him, then he resets all the booby traps and you go again. It's a really inventive boss fight, and it's way better than just simply like a one-on-one gunfight against Viper. Now when we defeat him, we do rescue Chris, and we get to confront Chris about the lies that she was telling earlier, try to figure out, is she the mole, is she the rat here? And she basically says that she's still the good guy, but she lied about her involvement with Delta Force because that's what she was instructed to do in order to try to find these documents, to destroy them and such as that. And so like Snake's like, all right, I forgive you. It all checks out. I guess you're still a good guy. And so now we're trying to figure out like, well, who is the bad guy on my team? But there's no time to question it. We're at Metal Gear. We have to basically try to take the giant, robot down. And so our first little scene here fighting against Metal Gear is basically Metal Gear is going to be walking down the street. Sort of like a Ghostbusters movie to a degree. And as he's walking down the street, we have to lay our little bombs out here. A little C4 has to step on. We blow it up. We take the legs out. And it's a pretty good little battle against Metal Gear. But we know that's not the end of it. Metal Gear is a powerful giant robot. And so now we have to take Metal Gear out that's on the ground. It has a little turrets, a little missiles, and things like that. And Metal Gear would actually be a pretty hard little fight here, but I did figure out, like, if you sort of go up into like the armpit of Metal Gear, you can take out sort of where it throws its bombs out, you can take out the turrets, and you can dodge all the little missile attacks really darn easy. And then once you've done that, you can go back down to the bottom part, and you can basically hide behind this little canister, and you won't get hit by any of the flames, and just basically run up, throw a little grenade out, run back, and you will never get hit by any of the flames, and you can take Metal Gear out really darn fast. So for being one of the final bosses in the game, it was a really cool fight, and I feel like if you went it like more legitimate way, it was probably way more difficult, but if you went with my cheese method, it wasn't too bad. But still a really cool environment that you're fighting in. But you know that's not the end of the game. We got some more lore to go through, and we got one more fight of another enemy in just a second. But now that Metal Gear is destroyed, the general begins to talk to us, because you know he's the one commanding Metal Gear, and he tells us that this whole plan about Gendra taking Metal Gear to win the Civil War was actually not the entire story. The United States actually organized all of this. They are, you know, basically a corrupt organization at this point. And so, but they organized for Metal Gear to be sent over into Gendra, and then when the conflict erupted between the nations, then the United States would have an excuse to go into Gendra and basically have a military presence in Gendra and have influence on that side of the world. And so they basically set up this entire scenario in order to make the United States even more powerful. Now the general was hoping, like, once this began and he had control of Metal Gear, he could sort of do his own little thing, but that didn't work out because, you know, I got involved here and ruined his plans. But once again, like, the plot continues to twist constantly, and it's about to get more twisted because then Viper comes out, and Viper says that he was responsible for getting the United States to invade Gendra to give the United States more influence. And he says that he did this to get revenge on the United States in order to hopefully get control of Metal Gear himself. And he says, like, he had actually hired McBride, who's one of our members on our team, in order to get the United States to agree with this mission, you know, recruit me in order to help with all of this. And basically Viper's behind all of this in order to get his revenge on what the United States did to him when he came back from the original Metal Gear mission. And then Viper says that he has given the final command for Metal Gear to fire off its last nuclear weapon, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Metal Gear still had just enough energy left in it after our destruction here in order to complete this final task of Viper, and there's only 90 seconds before the message reaches the satellite in order for Metal Gear to know what to do. And so we have 90 seconds to take out Viper and stop the message going to the satellite. And this is a really anticlimactic end of the game as far as like boss fight anyway, because like the fight against Viper here, it's basically just him sort of running back and forth on the left side and on the right side. He has to go up and just, you know, shoot him a couple times, and he disappears to the other side and go up and shoot him a couple times. A really, really easy boss fight. Like, the Metal Gear fight was way more complex, way harder, and this one was sort of anticlimactic compared to like what you already went through. Now, once you kill him off, at this point you've stopped Metal Gear from firing off its nuclear weapons, and you've basically saved the day. But wait, there's more, because the story is going to take another twist. It's like when you're around your friends sometimes, like one person tells a story and somebody has to like try to one-up that story, and then someone else has to try to one-up that story, and then someone else one-ups that story. This is what this game feels like. It's like everybody, like, you know, the general had a twist, and then Viper had to come in and say like, nope, the twist is actually me. And it's like, nope, the twist is actually the United States. And now the twist is actually McBride. And now it's like, holy cow, like, where are all the twists going to go? But we have yet even more twist, because Chris now appears and she says that the director of the CIA, Steve Gardner, was actually behind all of this, and he was the one who wanted Metal Gear for himself in order to have the maximum amount of power, I guess, to do whatever he wants to do with it. And there's actually another member of our party who was corrupt, and that was Weasel. And Weasel knew about McBride. Weasel knew about the entire Gendra situation as far as like the United States betraying and all of that. And so evidently Weasel was in on his own little plot here with Steve Gardner. And like, holy cow, like, who is the ultimate bad guy in this game? Like, everybody seems like the bad guy. Everybody, like, everyone knew what was going on, or everybody knew like some sort of a conspiracy or some sort of setup. And it's like, poor Snake. Snake was just out there like doing a job, and like everybody else had like these ulterior motives. And it's a very, very confusing plot. And I think the ultimate bad guy in the game here would just simply be Steve Gardner of the CIA. And so the game does come to a close here. We allow Sophie to, you know, continue on her mission to try to get Gendra to be a recognized country, fight for the right ideals. And me and Chris agree to head back to the United States and we basically agree to be in a little bit of a romantic relationship here. We talk about how much we care about each other, and then we go back to the United States, and Snake is going to work to take down everyone in the United States who has set him up in order to for their own selfish goals. So Snake is sort of a vigilante at this point, and we sort of ride off into the distance here in our little car. A really cool scene, like the sunset going down, little car scene, and at this point the credits then begin to roll. And I have to say, like, the story, it's a really enjoyable story, but it is very convoluted, and I feel like they could have taken some of the twists down at the end a little bit, and they could have made a more well-rounded story. But as far as like a well-developed story in a game on the Game Boy Color that tried its hardest to tell a really in-depth story, this game, the award goes to this game. There is no other game on the Game Boy Color that has attempted, and I will say succeeded, even though it had a little bit of flaws at the end, in my opinion. It still succeeded on telling probably the most in-depth story I've seen on the Game Boy Color. And this is like rivaling those RPGs out there, for like those really in-depth stories like the Kings and the Kingdoms and whatnot. This had more twists and turns than most any of those. But the story itself, enjoyable, really good. The graphics of the game, top tier. This is some of the best the Game Boy Color has to offer. The cutscenes, fantastic. The overhead action scenes, fantastic. The boss scenes, everything. Graphic-wise, no complaints in any way. The gameplay itself, solid start to finish. The boss fights were all very unique. They had their own individual mechanics. They all sort of trained you for those particular fights. The levels themselves, the sneak mechanics, they were always very well set up as far as like knowing what to do, but just simply having to put what you've learned into action. And the gameplay, I've not played a better stealth game on the Game Boy. Perfect Dark was really good. This is better than Perfect Dark in pretty much every way. The soundtrack for the game, there were some really great songs on the soundtrack, especially like the emotional scenes, like when you had killed one of the main bosses and they're going to like their personal history. Those are some of the best songs on the soundtrack. But overall, this is one of the best games I've played on the Game Boy. It's a fantastic game. If you enjoy stealth games, Metal Gear Solid games, or just simply Game Boy Color games in general, I can't imagine anyone not enjoying this game. I'm not a huge Metal Gear fan. Like, I've never played a Metal Gear game before. Just simply because like covert operations or covert missions and all that, military style games never like interest me a whole lot. But this game itself, I was pulled in pretty much the entire time. And so I think this game could literally appeal pretty much to anyone out there. But so overall, I'm going to give the game, I can't think of any complaints. We'll give it a 10. It's a great game. I'd say one of the best that you can possibly get on the system. But what do you all think? Have you played Metal Gear Solid before? Did you enjoy the game? Did you dislike the game? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.